There was a moment on the mission field when I looked up at heaven and I told God I was done. I was done with him. I said I hated him, and I literally gave him the finger. And it didn't happen out of rebellion, it happened out of immense heartbreak. When I was a pastor, I felt like the church around me had really drifted from the mission of Jesus. And I felt like all we cared about was the Sunday show, and something burned inside me for real discipleship, for real mission, real surrender. So when I felt God calling me to Thailand, I didn't hesitate. I wanted to be the example of a disciple maker. So my family and I, we sold everything and we uprooted our entire lives. And we thought, you know what? God called us to this place. He's going to bless this, and it's going to be an amazing thing. I imagined fruit. I imagined salvations all over. I imagined this movement starting, stories of God breaking chains all over the place. And I truly believe that radical obedience meant radical results. But then it really hit. We quickly realized that the mission was untested. We were the guinea pigs. There was no structure. There was no support. There was very little cultural preparation. And the one Thai guy who was supposed to help us, we found out was actively against us because he thought we were too American for the ministry out there. And so everything just began to unravel. And it was slow, and it was painful, and it was confusing. I held on as long as I could because my faith mattered to me. But day after day, there was unanswered prayer, and week after week, there was no breakthrough. Month after month, the confusion just began to escalate. There was humiliation. I felt like we had been tricked by God into obedience. Like he called us out there, and then he just kind of stepped back and watched everything collapse and blow up in our faces. And the worst part was I couldn't make sense of any of it. I had done everything right. I had had radical obedience. I sold everything. It still fell apart. And this is where bitterness started to kind of take root in my life. It wasn't instantaneous. It was slow, and it was silent. It was like a poison that you don't notice until it's everywhere. And one night, I remember so vividly, I cracked. It wasn't this dramatic cracking. It wasn't loud, but it was a year's worth of pain that finally boiled over. And I yelled at God, and I told him that I hated him. I gave him the finger, and I meant it. And it wasn't because I didn't believe in him. It was because I couldn't understand why the God that I trusted would let obedience end in such a dramatic disaster. And so after that moment, I entered into this long season of spiritual silence. I wasn't talking to him much anymore. My faith didn't disappear entirely. It hung on by a thread, but bitterness was kind of holding the rope. I wrestled with disappointment and anger and shame all at once. And every day that I stayed angry, this bitterness just kind of dug deeper and deeper and drove this wedge further and further into my life until my relationship with God was just a shell. It wasn't until years later that I realized something, that this bitterness was poisoning me, and it wasn't doing anything to hurt God, which I think I was trying to do. I decided I needed to forgive God, not because he made a mistake, but because I knew that this unforgiveness was killing my soul. And it was in that moment that I finally understood something that I had missed, that God is not threatened by honesty, and he's not intimidated by our anger. He would rather have your real heart. And so here's three things that I learned through this painful experience. And the first thing is that faith is spelled R-I-S-K. Obedience is not a guarantee of an outcome. It's a test of our trust. God calls us to follow him, not to control the results. The second thing that I learned is that God will let false expectations die so that real faith can live. Sometimes the dream has to break so that the identity underneath can be rebuilt. The third thing that I realized is that you can tell God the truth. even if it's ugly, right? He still didn't leave. He was right there ready to hear me when I was ready to come to him. Honesty is the doorway to a real relationship. And so I don't know what has possibly collapsed in your life. I don't know how you feel God has disappointed you, but I do know this. I know that He can handle your honesty, He can handle your anger, and He never stops pursuing the heart of His kids. If bitterness has taken root in your life, freedom is going to begin with the moment that you tell God the truth. If this video resonates with you, I'm going to be releasing new episodes every week of real stories, real honesty, real freedom. I want you to know that you're not alone in this. I want to help you walk forward in freedom, even if that freedom just starts with a little whisper in your life.